All right, picture this. You're standing completely alone in the vast, freezing expanse of the Nevada desert. It's the dead of night. The wind is howling, it's pitch black, and then, just over the jagged silhouette of the mountains, this glowing, unnatural light darts across the sky at speeds that absolutely defy every known law of physics. I mean, it makes no sound, it has no exhaust, and then boom, in the blink of an eye, it's just gone. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unraveling a mystery that has terrified and captivated the public for decades. We are going to completely gut this legend, dissecting the ultimate modern ghost story piece by piece. We're diving deep into a crazy labyrinth of chilling cover-ups, deep state paranoia, and extraterrestrial lore. So let's jump right into the desert's darkest secret.
You know, it's kind of fascinating just how mundane, yet utterly terrifying this barrier actually is. I mean, it's literally just a chain-link fence and a stark warning sign. But beyond it, hundreds of miles of absolutely restricted, heavily guarded nothingness. This is the perimeter of Area 51. For decades, the US government flat out refused to even acknowledge this place existed. And that created an information vacuum so powerful, it birthed an absolute cultural obsession. By 2019, that obsession reached such a fever pitch that 1.5 million people signed up for that viral internet event to storm Area 51 just to finally, see them aliens. But what exactly drove millions of everyday people to want to rush a heavily armed military installation?
Well, as you can see here, this wasn't just some overnight phenomenon. It was more like a slow, creeping paranoia that built up over decades. It really kicked off back in 1947 with the infamous Roswell crash down in New Mexico. Then, jump to 1959, the Reno Gazette starts publishing these terrifying accounts of bright green objects plummeting toward the Earth at totally impossible speeds. And that tension just simmered for 30 years. That is, until 1989, when a single interview blew the lid off the whole thing, cementing Area 51 as the epicenter of a chilling global conspiracy. And that timeline perfectly sets the stage for the guy who literally changed everything.
Section 1. Bob Lazar and Sector 4. So enter Bob Lazar. In November of 1989, a local Vegas TV station broadcast an interview with a man whose face was totally hidden in shadow. He was going by the fake name Dennis. Well, his real name was Robert Lazar, and he permanently altered the history of anomalous phenomena. He didn't just come forward with some blurry, out-of-focus photos or vague stories about weird lights. No, his testimony was terrifyingly cold, clinical, and highly specific.
Lazar's claims were gripping precisely because they felt so horrifyingly plausible. He stated he was hired by the Office of Naval Intelligence to work at a super-classified underground complex that was literally carved into a mountainside near Papoose Lake. They called it S4, and it was just south of the main Area 51 base. And his job? To reverse engineer the propulsion systems of non-human spacecraft. He explicitly detailed walking into these camouflaged hangars and seeing 9 distinct flying saucers of extraterrestrial origin sitting right there. He even casually referred to one of them as the sport model.
Now here is the crucial part, the thing that really grounded his wild sci-fi claims in real applied physics. Element 115. Lazar claimed these craft weren't using jet fuel or standard combustion. Instead, they housed an antimatter reactor fueled by element 115, which was a super heavy element that literally didn't even exist on our periodic table back in 1989. According to his breakdown, bombarding this element with protons generated antimatter and amplified gravitational waves. So the craft didn't push against space like a normal rocket, it actually distorted space-time around itself. It was essentially falling toward its destination by bending gravity.
But as you can imagine, blowing the whistle on a secret of this magnitude comes with a terrifying price. Look at this quote. This really brings in that pure, bone-chilling fear factor regarding what Lazar allegedly went through. He detailed a brutal, ongoing campaign of psychological terror and deep-state intimidation. We're talking about having the tires of his moving car shot out on the highway, relentless surveillance, and, according to a corroborating witness, showing up visibly beaten, claiming military operatives had put a loaded gun to his head and ordered him to keep his mouth shut. It paints a deeply unsettling picture of a shadow government that's more than willing to kill to protect its secrets.
But let's just hit pause for a second and take a breath. Actually, scratch the aliens for a moment. If the military was genuinely willing to threaten lives and erase identities like that, and it wasn't to protect captured extraterrestrials, what on earth were they hiding out there?
Section 2. Declassifying the truth. To answer that, we have to look at the paperwork. We're shifting gears from science fiction to grounded investigative reality here, and as you'll see, the mundane truth of what the government was actually doing out in that desert is honestly just as fascinating as the myth itself.
So as highlighted in this Time magazine piece, for decades the CIA flat out denied Area 51 even existed. Nothing to see here, folks, but the truth didn't actually come out through some daring raid or a massive whistleblower leak. Nope, it came out because of a paperwork accident. In 2005, a researcher named Dr. Jeffrey Richardson submitted a totally routine Freedom of Information Act request. He wasn't even looking for aliens, he was just researching old spy planes. But his request legally forced the CIA to finally declassify documents in 2013 that officially, formally acknowledged Area 51. The government's darkest secret was literally undone by a bureaucratic technicality.
And the reality hidden behind those terrifying warning signs? It wasn't a galactic spaceport at all. The real culprit was the sleek, extremely ominous black U-2 spy plane. The secret behind the fences had nothing to do with visitors from another world. It was simply the absolute epicenter of top-secret Cold War military aviation.
Section 3. Aquatone and the Ox Cart. Let's dive into the actual programs they were running out there. Back in the 1950s, the CIA desperately needed an isolated place to test aircraft that could fly high enough to spy on the Soviets without getting shot down. To try and attract workers out to this completely miserable, dusty, middle-of-nowhere dry lake bed, the CIA gave it a cheerful little nickname, Paradise Ranch. But believe me, what they were building there was absolutely not a vacation.
Seeing the myth next to the reality here completely guts the legend. People all over Nevada were reporting these glowing silver discs flying at impossible speeds. But let's look at the facts. In the 1950s, your average commercial airliner only flew at about 20,000 feet. The unpainted, bare silver U-2 spy plane was secretly cruising at a mind-boggling 60,000 feet. So at dusk, when the ground and the lower atmosphere were already in total darkness, the U-2 was flying so incredibly high that its silver body was still catching the reflection of the setting sun. To a commercial pilot looking up into the dark night sky, it looked exactly like a glowing, fiery UFO darting across the heavens.
And to put the sheer scale of this into perspective, 2,850. That is the exact number of test flights conducted just for the A-12 Oxcart program alone at Area 51 during the 1960s. That is almost 3,000 instances of a futuristic titanium aircraft literally streaking across the sky at supersonic speeds. It is absolutely no wonder that civilian UFO sightings skyrocketed during this exact time. I mean, the military was practically putting on a daily sci-fi light show over the Nevada desert.
And here is my absolute favorite part of the whole story. As revealed in these declassified top-secret documents, the way the government handled the public panic was incredibly ironic. The Air Force famously set up Project Blue Book to publicly investigate all these widespread UFO sightings. But here's the catch. The CIA and the Air Force were the ones secretly causing the sightings with the U-2 and Oxcart flights. So you literally had military investigators actively running around trying to solve UFO cases, completely unaware that their own bosses were flying the very craft they were looking for.
Section 4. The ultimate smokescreen. Which brings us to the ultimate twist ending of this explainer. You see, the government didn't just hide experimental planes out in the desert. When they realized the general public genuinely thought these planes were alien spacecraft, they didn't step in to correct them. Instead, they actively weaponized the myth.
Their disinformation strategy was honestly brilliant. A recent Wall Street Journal investigation, backed up by former Defense Department officials, revealed that the government orchestrated a massive, deliberate cover-up. They actually went as far as feeding fake, doctored UFO photographs to local dive bars near Area 51. Why would they do that? Because it was infinitely safer for national security to let the American public, and by extension Soviet spies, chase imaginary Martians than it was to let them discover the existence of revolutionary stealth technology like the F-117 Nighthawk and the B-2 Spirit bomber. The whole alien conspiracy became the perfect, self-sustaining smokescreen.
And this strategy totally extended to some of the most famous UFO lore in history. Take the 1967 Montana missile incident. The story goes that a glowing UFO hovered over a base and miraculously deactivated a bunch of nuclear missiles. For decades, ufologists held this up as rock-solid proof of alien intervention. But the declassified reality? It was just a highly classified internal security test utilizing an electromagnetic pulse to simulate a solar flare. For national security reasons, the higher-ups didn't even tell their own base personnel the truth, happily letting the supernatural alien narrative take hold instead.
Okay, I do have to add a quick touch of humor here though. Ironically, as we see here with Project 1794, the Air Force did actually try to build a real flying saucer during the Cold War. But it certainly wasn't reverse engineered from any crashed alien ships. It was the AVRO vertical takeoff vehicle, and it was a spectacular, very terrestrial flop. It cost $3 million to build, was incredibly unstable, and barely hovered a few feet off the dirt before the whole project was embarrassingly scrapped. So much for the intergalactic threat we were promised, right?
But wait a second. Before we completely close the book on the paranormal, there's one serious spark of mystery that still remains. Remember Bob Lazar? He originally claimed way back in 1989 that the craft he worked on rotated on its axis to fly belly first when traveling at high speeds. Fast forward to the now famous declassified 2004 Navy footage of the USS Nimitz Tic Tac UAP. In that video, the unidentified craft rotates mid-air, adopting the exact same unnatural, physics-defying flight signature that Lazar described 15 years prior. How could a supposed fraud in the 80s perfectly predict the exact flight mechanics of a phenomenon that the Pentagon would only admit was real decades later?
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. We now know for a fact, through declassified documents, that the whole Area 51 legend was a brilliant, highly deliberate deception. It was a myth engineered from the ground up to protect the Cold War's most advanced spy planes. But the skies today are still filled with unexplained phenomena. So if the UFO sightings of the 1960s were just hiding the U-2 and the ox cart, what incredible, terrifyingly advanced secrets are today's sightings hiding from us right now? The truth really is out there. But as we've learned today, the truth is usually heavily classified. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your eyes on the skies.